Yeah, the VIX got a candle of indecision in the form of a spinning top, but it did close above the 50-period moving average. The S&P, getting rejection at the 200 so far, got a candle of indecision in the form of a doji. If we get another push down, the VIX could surge, and we could end up seeing a bottom develop as maybe we get a nasty, ugly drop lower, but undercutting the low. Do we see a divergence or discrepancy where the VIX makes a lower high and the S&P makes a lower low? Certainly possible if we have not bottomed yet. But again, it is still possible that we do have a bottom in place if the S&P can get back above the 200. We got a candle of indecision today, watching to see if we can get back above the 200 period moving average or not. You surge above the 50 period here. Again, S&P will go lower. That's a support zone and maybe to a new low. When you're above the 50 period, bad things happen on the S&P 500. If we drop back below it, then the S&P attempt to get back above its 200 period moving average in the daily time frame. So far, the S&P got just above our 38.2 Fibonacci. It rallied up just over 5% from the lows. After selling off 10.5%, and we are stalled at our 200 period. We have not reached the 50. We have not reached a significant Fibonacci retracement. The golden pocket up here, the 50% retracement down here. Be watching, can we clear the 200 or do we go back and test the low here? We'll be watching to see which way this unfolds. Again, I've been talking about those two scenarios for bottoming process, and it's possible the bottom is in because we still get divergences on the OSM oscillator and the RSI and the MACD. Look at the horizontal support levels. Right here, we were just above this horizontal support level right here. If we go a little bit lower, again, you have this is the VWAP support going all the way back to the 2022 low. So that's a long-term VWAP support right there. Rally further, try to get back above the 200. You got more VWAP resistance up on in here. So if we do go a little bit lower, we end up undercutting the low. You've got major support right in here directly below. VWAP, that's at the VWAP support from the 2022 low. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. I don't have any sponsors. I turn those offers down. I just have a direct relationship with you. If you like the charts and indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel. It'd really be encouraging to hear from you. I just put out all the information that I look at and ask that you just do what you can to help out. So if you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. The link below to take you to a secured site, and you can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Thank you for your consideration for that. Again, signals bouncing back and forth. We're seeing some green. There's more work to be done. Got to get above the cloud here. But we started to get some green, and then the background turned to green. Started to get bars trying to turn positive, and then it flipped back as we went back to try to fill the gap. Now, at the very end of the session, it's starting to flip back to green. So kind of a mixed bag. We're just kind of going sideways. Again, still risk of a divergence that we end up getting a divergence on indicators in the daily and intraday time frame. You could still see a divergence develop and undercut this low. But you could also get another higher low here at our trend line of support. You'll see on the 15-minute chart. Bottoming signals, the S&P 500, and now we're flipping momentum signals and starting to see some trend signals turn to bullish, but we need to see more. We need to see more signals turn to bullish with our trend signals and get back above the 200 if this is over. The risk is we get another push down like Bitcoin did previously. We'll be watching if we can get back above that 200 on the S&P or not. Got to get back above the 200, the black line, and if this is going to turn, we got to flip this around. We got to get rid of the red. Otherwise, the risk is we come back and we take out this low again, or get a higher low and test the support zone. So again, we're seeing some signals turn back to bullish. We saw bottoming signals. We saw momentum flip back to bullish. Now we need to see trend signals all begin to turn. We've seen a few, but there is more work to be done, more work needed to be done if that is in fact the case. Getting rejection off the 200. Intraday, mixed bag, because again, tried to flip signals bullish, some turning back to bearish here. Others turned bearish and now trying to flip back to bullish, but really just showing a mixed bag. We got to get back above the 200 to be bullish. If we're going to go lower, we're likely market divergence on the daily chart and a bottom. Again, we've seen the bottoming signals, the momentum turned back to bullish. That has to continue to get more of the trending signals turning back to bullish. We come down, we take out the support zone, and you're going to start seeing signals turn back to bearish, bounce and get above the 200. The signals will remain bullish, and you'll see more signals turn bullish. The S&P 500 still has a bullish reversal of conditions, so momentum is still positive, but it's got to be able to get the S&P back above the 200. Can the 10 get back above the 20 period here? And we see a push above the 200. Possibly that's what Bitcoin did. The risk is that we either come back down here to form a divergence and undercut this low, or that we get another higher low somewhere above this low right here. So again, the awesome oscillator turn red and remain negative, or does it push into the bars, push into the positive territory, and we head towards the 50 period moving average? Risk is that we get another low to form a divergence. Happens, the bears, if we say we get a nasty gap down and we end up gapping down, it's likely going to form a bottom, and the bears are going to tell us that we're about to fall into the abyss, when again we are likely in a bottoming process. Again, it's still possible that we have a bottom here. I've talked about the Elliott wave count. So again, looking for clues, but got to get back above the 200 to mark this as a bottom. The risk is that we still form the diversions. Same thing, momentum still bullish here. The risk is we get a divergence, still have a bullish reversal of conditions. We're still trying to find support at these 10 period moving averages. We take out the lower boundary of the cloud, then the risk is that we move to a new low and get a divergence. Same thing here. We saw these bottoming signals on the S&P 500. The risk is we do what Bitcoin did and we go get another bottom, another test of the lows and take them out ever so slightly. That's what Bitcoin did. But we have followed Bitcoin back up to the 200. So again, if we don't do that, then we could just follow it. Should Bitcoin continue to rally, hold above the 200. Momentum line still bullish, but if we start gapping lower or turning down, start coming down, taking out the support zone, then the risk is, again, you get a divergence on indicators. You could see it here with momentum as well. You could end up forming a divergence here. Did these signals just mark a short-term bottom and the rally, an over 5% rally back up to above the 200, or is it a bottom that it is marking the bottom? Looking for clues, candle of indecision today. Momentum starts turning back to bearish, then again, good chance we're going to probably go lower. Back above the 200, good chance we're going to rally to the 50 period moving average. I think on the NASDAQ, you still have the momentum line hanging in there. You still got the green bars, but again, we start going lower. Momentum could turn back to bearish. Did these signals just mark a short-term bottom or the bottom? Again, do we get a divergence developing on momentum and the RSI and the awesome oscillator and all the rest of it? Or do we see these go into positive territory as Bitcoin has done? Follow Bitcoin in its price action right now, immediately getting back above the 200 after pulling back at it. We do what Bitcoin ended up doing previously and forming a double bottom and testing the lows. So you want to see my latest Bitcoin video, I'll link it at the end of this video and you can see what I'm talking about. All right, the tariff sell-off continues. Last 2 days, the market has been rattled by Trump's auto tariffs. He started to tone down and walk back the reciprocal tariffs for April 2nd. Monday we had the rally on hopes the tariffs aren't going to be as bad as previously thought. Earlier in the week, Trump is coming out and starting to walk it back, saying that the tariffs will probably be more lenient than reciprocal. Again, the reciprocal is matching dollar for dollar. So again, we'll see what happens, but extreme negativity right now. And again, the things that develop as bottoms, pessimism, sentiment is just super bearish. We've had extreme fear in recent days. Now we get Trump announcing the 25% tariff on all cars not being made in the United States. And it always cracks me up, these countries that are the worst offenders of tariffs. Europe, we had the European Union come out and about how horrible Trump's tariffs are. But yet Europe has By far some of the worst tariffs, much worse than Trump's tariffs. These people, they feign outrage, and yet they're the worst offenders. Don't like the tariffs being imposed on European goods going into the United States, but they love the tariffs on U.S. products going into Europe. And again, what Trump's trying to do is he's trying to open some of these markets. He's trying to unlock some of these markets that are closed to the United States right now and level the playing field. If Europe hates tariffs so much, and they're so in Germany, oh, Trump's tariffs, oh, they're just horrible. They hate tariffs so much, then why don't they get rid of their high tariffs? All these people running around, all these political leaders in other countries feigning outrage. And then the media telling us Trump's going to cause a recession. But all these other high tariffs, they don't cause recession in these other countries. Those tariffs, they're going to cause all this inflation. But all these other tariffs in these other countries, they don't cause inflation. No, just Trump's tariffs. You got to be completely brain dead to believe what the media is trying to sell us. And I'm not a fan of Trump's tariffs. These other countries, their tariffs are even worse than Trump's. I understand why he's trying to do it. These other countries, they try to justify their tariffs for protecting the farmers. Well, what if we wanted to protect the American farmers here in the United States? You see what I'm saying? That's why I don't like tariffs. I like free trade, but hopefully people will come to the negotiating table, get all this resolved. Cracks me up. The media is so willing to report how all these countries are just so outraged. And they don't bother to tell you all the high tariffs in all these other countries. Absolutely incredible. Many people, rather than do critical thinking and think this through, as I'm talking with you about, want to believe the Kool-Aid. Continuing to sell off surrounding the auto tariffs. The Dow was down 155 points, down 0.37%. The S&P down 0.33%, down almost 19 points to 56.93. The NASDAQ down just over 0.5%. The Russell down 0.39%. The VIX was up just under 2%, hovering at 18.69. Just had the GDP come in better than expected. Came in at 2.4. This is for the fourth quarter. This is our second revision, 2.4% versus 2.3%. So it came in better. GDP now estimate is for quarter one of 2025. That's a negative number that Wall Street's been freaking out about. May even improve, or even if it comes in negative, estimate for the second quarter could start being positive. The market could end up shrugging it off. Could improve by the time we get the final number by the end of April. I think on April 30th we'll get that number. Initial jobless claims hanging in there. So again, the bulls are going, this is extremely bullish. I think we're going to go higher, and the recession signals still going to play out. But people, when we go higher, the sentiment will change and people's emotions will change. We are going to have the recession. The economic data coming in better than expected today. The bulls, a little bit of hope there. We'll get the PCE inflation data tomorrow. 4-month numbers for the core and headline numbers supposed to be 0.3% for both. And then the year over year headline number is supposed to stay the same at this point, 2.5%, but the core is supposed to rise 2.7% opposed to the 2.6% previously on a year-over-year basis, so we'll be watching that. The reciprocal tariffs next week. Have a jobs report a week from tomorrow. Sentiment still above 50% this week. We have it at 52.2. Previously, it was at 58.1. We're still seeing these readings above 50, and prior to that, 5 weeks ago, it was above 60 at this historical reading right here, this one-year high. Percent of bulls, 27.4%. We've been seeing it hover between 19 and 21%. It's a little higher. Again, we're at levels where bottoms develop. Sentiment is extremely bearish. We were at levels of extreme fear. We've been hovering around fear here the last few days, moving off of the lows off of extreme fear recently. We did have that bullish divergence at the low with the S&P making a new low, and the fear greed did not. Could get a triple bullish divergence, or that might mark a bottom. We're watching closely because you still might get the divergence on the awesome oscillator, as I've been talking about, and the RSI in the daily time frame. Bottoming process that very well could be done. You can clear the 200 period moving average and then hold above it, but you got to be able to do that. Just dropped right back below it yesterday. We move towards next week. We're going to be watching because there's concerns about retaliatory tariffs If we do get further volatility surrounding the tariffs, so it will be interesting to see if, again, we get some good tariff news, negotiations, or pause on the tariffs or something like that happens. Trump walks them back, or whatever the case may be, something that can create a bottom and give us a rally of hope, as I've talked about. What we started off with the week with the gap higher, hope that maybe it's not going to be as bad, hope there's some kind of resolution to all of this. Very, very negative sentiment, again, likely causing some kind of, carving out some kind of bottom here. I think we're going to go to new highs. Today on the 15-minute chart, again, you can see right here, we gapped lower, rallied back up, and then it failed, and we came back, we tested this low and tested the trend line again, and then we tried to rally back up again and hit the 50, and we stalled in the cloud, and then came back and stalled right at this trend line in the 200 here in the 15-minute time frame. So again, do we now start breaking the trend line, going back down to test the lows, or can we rebound? Little bullish diversions right here. Let me just zoom out so you can see the trend line right here. Here's where we gapped lower. We formed a little bullish diversion, so we tested it again. So we're right at this trend line. We turned off of this trend line right here, more of a rising wedge than a channel. Parallel channel would be up here at this boundary here. A lot of people saying we have a bear flag. Well, we have more of a rising wedge than a bear flag. Bitcoin's got the same pattern. S&P dropped below the 200 period moving average. Got to get back above that to resume the advance. The risk is we come back and we test the support zone right here and move to try to take out the lows. And you got the gap down over here. So we'll be watching. Do we now get this final push down into the April 2nd date? Create some kind of bottom? Tariffs give us a bottom. See some kind of rally of hope. Trump either walk it back or pause them, or do we see negotiations happen? Whatever the case may be, do we see some type of bottom? Does this low hold? Get back above the 200, we start rallying towards the 50. We'll be watching to see which way it plays out here, but we're right at this trend line. You break it, then again, you've got the support zone down here. And on the 60-minute chart, here's the trend line right here, this dotted red trend line right here. Here's our 50. Again, we found support at the 50 over here. We found support at the 50 over here. So do we find support at the 50 here? We came down to just above that gap fill at 56.67. It's 50. If we round up, it's 56.68. We were just above that at the lows. Low was 56.70 today, so it didn't quite fill it, but hit the upper boundary there. That's on a closing basis, by the way. So again, we did hit that intraday upward high there. So again, filled that on the intraday high. The gap up here, 58.43. Again, this gap over here. Or if we get a bigger sell-off, you got the trend line down over here. You got the trend line from the highs that we could come and still back test, but still find support at our support zone area there without going to a new low. That's certainly possible. The risk here is that we take out this low and we end up forming a divergence on the RSI in the daily time frame, the awesome oscillator, and the MACD, all in the daily time frame. See the MACD begin to curl back up and try to bottom here, or back test and try to rebound, or does it go in negative territory and stay there? So far, this divergence has marked our short-term bottom here. Does that amount to a longer-term bottom if we can get back above the 200 period on the daily chart? Now, the 50 is here, the 200 is here on our 60-minute chart. Bitcoin is about to have the 50 cross back above the 200 period moving average. Could the S&P be right behind it? The S&P, I told you, down here was going to rally back to the 200 in the daily. It did follow Bitcoin back up to that level. Bitcoin's above the 200 right now. It had moved up above it, dropped back below it. S&P just did that. Does the S&P try to get back above the 200 period in the daily? Watching the 50 and the 200 here to see if we can eventually see a bullish cross, or do we see another sell-off and a test of the lows? We'll be watching. For the NASDAQ 60-minute chart, NASDAQ was down 118 points today, down 0.58%. NASDAQ gaps up here, and we've seen a rally now of about 6% up here. We've seen the S&P rally up about 5% off of the lows, and now we're pulling back. The 50 is here, the 200 here. We're pulling back to 50. It was over here and over here. We found support at the 50. Do we find support again at the cloud here and the 50 period moving average? Got to get back above the 200. And the gap fills right there if we're going to get the 50 back above it and see this in. So we'll be watching. See these MACDs firm up or go deeper into negative territory. They're slightly negative here in the 60-minute time frame. If I flip back to the other chart, if I bring up my cloud here, again, you can see the cloud is right here at that 50 period. So we lose this area that's going to be, going back into the support zone for a test, going back to this low for a test. If we can bounce here around the cloud, the 50, then again, maybe you got a shot of a rebound. But like I said, you could end up trying to back test, come down here, and then end up trying to rebound back up. We'll be watching to see what happens at this trend line, the 50 period, and the cloud of support in the S&P 500. Now, the S&P got a candle of indecision, a doji. Now, we had the evening star reversal yesterday, which is the wide range bar, the doji above their 200 period, and then we dropped back below the 200, and we got the evening star reversal. Now, in order for a candlestick to play out, you got to confirm and drop below the low of the low from the previous session of that reversal bar, and we closed right at it. So again, not very convincing, at least so far. Now the doji may be a continuation that might take us again back to back test into the support zone, and that may be it, or a reversal to come back, and this may be a gap and trap. You always want to watch a gap. Is it a gap and go, a gap and fill, or a gap and trap? Is it a gap and go where we keep going in the direction of the gap, which we're not doing, or is it a gap fill? We come back here, we fill the gap, and then we go on our way in the direction of the gap from Monday. Or is it a gap and trap where you come gap higher, but then you move in the other direction, maybe taking out this low and undercutting it and getting a push down there? So we're watching candle of indecision, a doji. It could be a reversal bar, wide range bar if we get a wide range bar back up and back above our 200, or it could be a continuation pattern. Dojis are candles of indecision. The risk is that, okay, we had this little divergence right here on the RSI in the daily time frame to mark this bottom. The risk is we get a larger divergence, that we come down here at the RSI and we undercut this low, and maybe you gap down or get something really ugly with futures, and the market ends up gapping lower, but then completes a divergence and bottoms out. Or maybe it's over, days going into or surrounding that April 2nd date next week. We'll be watching to see how this unfolds. But again, possible bottom here. Risk is we get one more push for a final flush out move for rebounding and going higher. Now, if we could get back above the 200 like Bitcoin did, again, you want to keep your eye on the 50 period, the cloud up here, the 100 period moving average, the pink line right there. Because again, we could move back towards that 50 period like we did if we can get back above the 200, like we did in 2000 and 2007. You got back above the 200 period moving average, and then into the 50. Do we rally and then come April 2nd get the volatility back to the 200 off of the 50? That's certainly possible. Or we sell off and get a higher low scenario ahead of the or with the April 2nd date, or that lower low and undercut and bottom out. So again, different ways it can play out. But if we can get above the 200, then this scenario comes into play where you're rallying back up towards the 50. Now again, back over here, we were told there's no way we're going to rally. I told you we were going to rally to the 200 period. We rallied to the 200 period. Now it's a waiting game. Do we get rejection here as we did yesterday so far, or can we clear this level? The S&P is doing exactly what Bitcoin did. It went up to the 200, it dropped back below it, and then it, got the strength to get back above it. Now it's a waiting game. Do we get back above it on the S&P? We had that failed breakout up here. I talked about that from the January high. We had a failed breakout, and we saw the reversal. We'll see if we get a larger. Now again, the bears are telling us there's no way we're going to rally. Well, we have rallied. We've rallied up over 5%. Now they're saying it's done, it's over. And if we continue to rally, if we get another leg down and then rally, get back up in this area, and it could be we do it sooner rather than later, the bears are going to tell us counter-trend. They're the ones telling us right now there's no possible way we're going to rally. Yet we've rallied. We've seen the S&P rebound by over 5% off of the lows, after dropping 10.5% from this high over here. And even hit a Fibonacci, the 50% or the golden pocket, the 61 or 78.6 Fibonacci's really going to do that. So in order to rebound, we got to get back above the 200. Staying below it, the risk is that we get this higher low and back test, or that we try to take out the low. Those are the scenarios. Are telling us that we're about to have the bottom fall to the stock market. That's it. It's over. And I don't think so. I think this is a preview of coming attractions in the overall topping process. As I've talked about last weekend, had the big sell-off in 2000 and 2007 before a massive push higher. I still think we're going to run up 17 to 20% higher. Then I think we're going to top. I still think we're going to reach the trend line. I still think Bitcoin's going to reach the upper channel just like the S&P. And Bitcoin and the S&P are doing the exact same thing. My latest Bitcoin video, Amazing Indicators, at the end of this video. I'll link it for you. The market is following Bitcoin. You want to see where the market's going to go? Go watch my video on Bitcoin. Very fascinating. We're going to go back above the 200. RSI's got to break above the 50 level here and be able to hold above it. If we're going to be able to get a big rally, got to get back above the 200. Like I said, we may go up to the 50 and still come back to the 200. That's what happened during those topping processes that I talked about over the weekend. Do we get a back test here? Are we coming back and filling the gap? Is this a continuation doji candlestick, the doji cross, or is it a reversal bar? We'll be watching. And I've talked about the scenarios where we either have a bottom end with completing this ABC move right here for wave 4, intermediate wave 4, or we're not done yet and the blue count kicks in that this is all wave 3. This is 4 now. The blue count right here, we stall at the January resistance level. That's where we're stalling right now, and we end up pushing down. We're right at the 10 period, by the way, and we're right at the momentum cloud. If we can bounce here off these levels, we can get back above that 200. If we break these levels, then you're going to the support zone and possibly to test this low. If you do, then you got the blue count, the 4 and the 5 here. Regardless, whichever way it plays out, I think we're going higher, and I think we're going to go above this high very quickly over several weeks, or it may take a few months. It could go on into April and May. We could see the seasonality kick in right now and bottom out and rally about the seasonality yesterday, or can drag on into the summer, possibly into the early fall. Think you're going up to the channel line I've talked about in the weekly time frame. So we've either already started intermediate wave 5 and we're now getting our first minor wave under construction here, or we haven't finished intermediate wave 4 and we're about to start intermediate wave 5, in my opinion. Scenarios that we've topped, as I talked about yesterday in the weekly time frame, but I think the jury is still out on that. And like I said, I believe that it looks more corrective to me than marking a top up here. So again, we'll be watching. If we can get back above that 200, stay above it. Remember, the 50 is still above the 200 period, and we haven't had a significant Fibonacci retracement yet, which we're likely going to get if we have topped. So I'm still in the camp that we haven't. Eventually, we're going to either we bottomed here or we're going to bottom, completing the intermediate wave 4, and then I think you're going to come up here and get wave 5. And again, this could be spread out. I've just have it on right here just so you can see it on the chart. Could be spread out on into May or in the summer or into the early fall. Certainly possible. Rise back up, and then again, those telling us there's no possible way that this rally that we've had so far is going to happen. And if we end up going higher, they're going to tell us back test, back test, back test, try to back test. But then again, like I said, we could end up completing the first minor wave. We could end up getting a minor wave 1, minor wave 2. They're going to tell us it's over. And then you get the minor wave 3 and you start blowing past the previous peak. So again, still may take out this low. That's certainly possible. But again, it could be we have a bottom if we can get back above our 200 period and stay above it. RSI back above 50 and stay above 50. Now, Bitcoin already has a 10 period crossing above the 20. We're about to get it here on the S&P, so we'll see what happens there. We're pulling back towards it to fill that gap. We'll see what becomes of this candle. Is it a candle decision that's a continuation to the downside, or is it a reversal bar? We'll be watching. We'll see if we try to back test or try to bounce off of the areas here I've talked about, or back test line without going to a new low. There's still risk of that happening. Here's my Elliott wave count on the 60-minute chart. And again, same thing I talked about on the daily chart here. So we'll see which count prevails, the blue count or the black count. Going back to the NASDAQ, I talked about the 60-minute chart already. Again, the same thing, the cloud, the 50 period, we'll be watching that. Here's a NASDAQ daily chart, and again, we're stalling at the 200 period moving average. Thing here, again, we're at the cloud of support, candle of indecision, and a doji at the 10 period moving average coming back to fill the gap right here. Didn't do it on a closing basis, but hit it on an intraday basis. So again, is that a continuation that takes out the support zone and we get a undercut of this low, or do we try to rebound off of these support area levels? Getting rejection at the 200, S&P got above the 200 and dropped below it. The NASDAQ got rejection at it. You see them do what Bitcoin did, getting rejection at the 200 initially, but then getting back above it. We go down and test this low. Bitcoin did have two tests. Key support, still at risk. The market does that, still at risk that we form a divergence. Again, just like S&P, we had a small little divergence right there. Do we end up getting a bigger one and undercut this low as we move into April 2nd or just around April 2nd? And again, do move to a new low. It very well could mark a bottom surrounding Trump's tariffs. We could see similar like in February. Remember, we had those tariffs to getting volatility for the February tariffs, beginning of February for Canada and Mexico. Trump paused tariffs and the market rallied up, a relief rally. Do we see something like that? Certainly possible. Same thing. Does the MACD end up forming a divergence, or does it just start heading towards the center line? So we'll be watching the RSI, the MACD, and the Osmo oscillator on these daily charts. Let me bring up my other chart on NASDAQ, the daily chart here. We are filling the gap from the Fed pivot back over here on September 18th. So that's where we're at right now. We go lower, you have the 400 period moving average. You've got a confluence of support in here. And as I've said on the S&P, there's quite a bit of support directly below that we're trying to bounce off of.